Welcome to the New Vision for Earth Film Festival and its third Q&A. Today, we are thrilled and excited to be joined by Anthony Ochieng, a conservation photographer, filmmaker, and director of the short film that we have just watched, The Forest Maker. For those of you who didn't catch it, no worries. It's available on the Film Festival platform, and we shall be sharing the URL in the chats. So let's get right into it. My name is Duncan Lukoy. I'll be the moderator for this Q&A. So karibu sana, Anthony.
Thank you so much, Duncan.
Yeah, so let's get straight into it. So the Mogisa story. Why did you decide to tell this story?
So the story was actually being told to support the UN Decade of Restoration. And the reason I was telling this story is imagine meeting a man that you've never seen the whole of your life, and he's just done so much for the environment. But he's never been featured, or his story has not been told. And as much as when I met him, he was going to retire, and I was like, no ways. I have to just tell your story so that people can not only just plant trees, but grow them for biodiversity, because you've really committed your lifetime to just preserving trees. But then he goes on beyond. He does not just talk about planting the trees and for biodiversity, but also gives solutions on how you can actually sustainably use trees in the process. So it's not just about conserving it. It's about giving it more clarity in terms of, yes, we need to do restoration. We need to mitigate climate effects using trees as a way. But then it's not just planting trees for ceremonious reasons. It's planting trees that goes beyond his own lifestyle or lifetime. Sorry, and that really was so inspiring. Even when I met him first, being a photographer, I thought I'll take a portrait image of him, but I couldn't because he had so much information and passion that I was just like, no, let me just listen and dwell with him into this particular forest, because I was in the forest with him. And it was so amazing to just stick with him in that forest, because when I left that forest, the amount of information I left with was just worth documenting to share with everyone who's within the space. Yeah.
Yeah. What was it like being with him in the forest?
Ooh, I think I have passion, but that guy has my passion times 4. Like he knows his stuff. He knows the trees. He knows the medicinal values. He knows their names with the local language. Even makes it much more even special, because just mentioning the names in the local language means he easily relates with the people around the particular area. And apart from that, he embraces chimps conservation. I was there shooting for an assignment for Chimpanzee Trust. But then when on that particular assignment, there was this friend of mine called Fanny, who was really like, you really need to meet someone who's passionate about conservation. And I was like, yeah, I'll probably meet him. But when I met him, it was just like, yeah, now this is that particular person. And when you hang out with him, because I was with him for like first of all, the first time I met, I was with him for like an hour in the forest. And I was so immense in just seeing the details of the forest, from the canopies to the ground cover, to the leaves vein system, to how the trees intertwine within that particular place. The forest felt a bit dark, with a very nice array of lights coming through the leaves. And just the sounds of the chimps moving around, because the chimps are there but a bit shy from people. And that is just beauty that it's healing in one or another for me. I feel it was a very good place to just be there with someone who's older than me, who's done so much conservation work over time. And I'm in this journey trying to identify what is my role in society in terms of conservation. Like, he gave me a whole new level of being more passionate about the work I do. Yeah.
Clearly from the film, we can learn that the forest provides a very vital ecosystem to the existence of chimpanzees and other organisms. So how can individuals who aren't directly dependent on forest in their daily lives gain a deeper appreciation for the essential roles that trees play?
I think all of us have access to a forest in one or another. I'm talking about the whole world. Every person has access to a forest in one or another. And I think appreciation can start by visiting those particular forests so you can be able to connect with those forests. You can't conserve what you do not know. But when you identify forests around your areas, whether it's a city, whether it's a town, visit those forests. It plays a key important role because there's a cost-benefit analysis that comes with you visiting that particular forest. But then apart from just visiting the forest, when you visit the forest in return, when you go back to a space where people haven't gone to that forest before, you can share that information with everyone. I'm talking about the African context where forests were always treated as areas of hiding for thugs, or it was where the militias will go into. So there's a very disconnected feel about forest over a given period of time. But forests are very, very safe havens of mental illness, spaces of redefining yourself as an individual and just enjoying a clean breath of air after staying in the city for a given period of time. So once you connect with the forest that you are close by, and that's what I advise individuals who are around cities or living in forest areas, go into those forests, see the beauty, go to the details. Don't just look at the forest as a structure. Look at it as an intertwined ecosystem that has these amazing organisms that need to be conserved. And then from there, you can now go back to your other space and be more of like an educator on your own capacity to share the beauty of what you actually learned. And that's just one simple way individuals can actually get into appreciation of forests. The other way, which I know every political space, every event, people just plant trees. And there's a billboard on the name of those particular trees. Think about planting that tree and then growing it for biodiversity. Like when you're doing tree planting, because at the moment, everyone is doing tree planting. The rains are here. We're excited about it. So everyone is doing tree planting. But then how many of us go back to revisit these particular trees? How many of us go to nurture them to be able to grow? So we need to be able to move beyond just planting and ticking boxes that we planted 1,000 trees. No, let's go beyond and actually plant them and grow them and nurture them for biodiversity. Because in return, climate change will actually be solved with that particular process of actually doing the actual growing of trees, growing and nurturing of trees. So that's the second bit I'll probably tell individuals to go through. But mostly important is if you're an individual who's not able to come into those particular spaces, is you can be able to calculate your carbon footprint in your own capacity and say, you know what, I used this particular number of fuels. I used this particular number of waste. Calculate it in your own capacity. Look for an organization that you believe on their values and support them in the restoration work. So you don't necessarily have to move. You just necessarily have to figure out how do you continuously support conservation of forests beyond the consumption of forests. I'll pick it from a financial point of view. I listen to a lot of podcasts of finances, and they say, if let's say you buy a shoe from Nike, which is like $1,000, are you able to invest on Nike at the same time? So if I'm using a product from an ecosystem, let's say I'm using trees, water, the value of what I'm using, can I be able to invest back into that particular value? Because if I'm using my book, I'm using water, I'm taking a shower, can I calculate the amount that I've actually bought with those particular services that I've got from nature and invest it back equivalently to nature? So that goes on a long term in investing on that particular space. So those are just the few I can mention on top of my head, but basically just to feed into what is realistic in both on a global context, what is actually realistic in terms of supporting conservation of forests.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about women in this story. What would you say or what would you talk about the role that women play in planting and growing this forest?
So women play a very key important role, and in most of the cases I've interacted with women is as much as Sezi, I'll use Sezi as an example. Sezi has a very solid family. Like I really love the way the wife made sure he's okay, make sure his tea is fine. Like we have all those amazing shots of the family component that didn't end up into the final cut. But then there is that connection where Sezi's wife played a very key important role in supporting Sezi's passion. And that's where women actually come into play. There's that combination of supporting, and I'm talking about those who believe in family spaces, like that particular space. But then in context of a global context, women play a very key important role because of how they do stuff. They do stuff in details, in precision, as compared to us men. As we do it in terms of, we need to do it because of tomorrow. We need to figure out, I'll do it, yes, but I'll be like, I'm doing it because I need tomorrow to be secure. But then women do it in the details, like really, really bring it down to nurturing the details. How was a tree planted? What type of tree was planted? I think that is what we can actually learn from women as a whole. Like, how do we restore ecosystem using the details of ensuring that we don't just plant the trees, but grow and nurture the trees in the process. And women right now across the conservation spectrum, they're awesome. They make decisions, move from places, right. and they really inspire a lot of other young men in the space, which is a very odd thing. So I believe that they have actually occupied a big extent at the moment, especially in terms of profession. But in terms on the ground, like we were doing a story in the coastal parts of Kenya where women are not allowed to go to the seas, especially in mangroves. But then right now they're actually being allowed to conserve mangroves and help men to conserve mangroves. So that has really changed over time. And I think that is just basically how the society changes with time, and that society changes with information that is being fed on it. So if proper information is fed into a society, more positive aspects come out from that particular space. Yeah.
Fantastic. So how did Mugisa and the community, how did they influence the way you told this story? You know, the things that you chose to tell and those that you decided to leave out.
So what really stood out for me with the story is I wanted Mugisa to be more of a point person within the society, of someone who's able to commit his life to conservation. But I'm looking at it from the point of that the communities have their different passion and aspiration. How can they amplify and do social positive change within society just the same way Mugisa did? So that's how the approach was. The individual can be passionate about healthcare, can be passionate about agriculture, but then how can they do it sustainably with a bit of passion and resilience and commitment? And for me, the film goes beyond restoration. It goes to seeing the value of us as human beings, committing to doing things for positive change. Yeah. So that is basically how looking at this particular film came into play.
I see. So who did you want to influence with this film, The Forest Guardian? At what extent? Were you looking at policymakers? Were you looking at environmentalists, scientists, or people at large?
So one is the people at large, but then when you break it down into the components, like policymakers who are doing the UN Decade of Restoration across the board, need to promote growing for biodiversity as a key component. And then how do we upscale it into government spaces, NGOs, and stuff? So that's for policymakers. But then it comes down now to especially for activists and people who are planting trees all over the place, grow your trees. If you planted 100 trees, just grow them. Make sure you can be able to grow them and replace them. we run an organization called TonyWild Foundation, which has as a component to use this film much more extensively into schools. And how we do it, it's called the Mitigation Project. And how we do it is we use the film as a lesson, as a component of a lesson plan to teach about tree growing using philosophy. So we break it down in the sense that, think about it. We always are under a tree at some point, enjoying that shade, but we never ask who actually planted the tree. So if one individual planted one single tree in a school and nurtured it beyond, nurtured it for 4 years and it grew, 10 years later, other individuals will come in and occupy that space. Let me bring it down into context. You as Duncan, you are an individual who was nurtured by different people over a given period of time. But then right now you provide a canopy to not only your family, it's people around you, advice, people you work with, because there's someone who nurtured you to that particular level. So that philosophy of nurturing a younger person to be the person they want to become is what we apply in the mitigation project to a younger person who's planting the trees. Some of them is for the first time, and actually planting those trees for sustainability. So the project is basically using philosophy to be able to enhance environmental education that goes beyond just planting trees for climate change, but planting trees that goes for biodiversity, goes for values in society, and just bringing a society that is just in the way it operates. Because when you go to a school and show them the film, I don't want them to end up as conservationists or forest guardians. No, I want them to be who they want to become. But then as they become who they want to become, do they have a backbone of environmental conservation in the process? Can they be able to stand up and tell the government, this does not work? I can be a business person, I can be an engineer, I can be a computer scientist, I can be any other thing in the career space, but can I be able to hold up my values of conserving the environment? And that is how we use now the film as a lesson plan to just keep on building and teaching younger people to appreciate conservation beyond just saying don't cut trees, just plant trees, but goes beyond the aspect of just planting trees. Yeah.
So after your experience with Bugisa and all you've documented as a conservation photographer and filmmaker, what needs to be implemented in your view to ensure having a more healthy and sustainable forest?
I think one of the most important things is that the currently existing forests need to remain intact as much as possible. And then within the farms that we have and the lands that we have, especially for those who own land, can now promote growing of trees within the land. So that is one particular aspect. The other aspect is that there's so much public land. Schools are public land, hospitals are public land across the board. But then these public lands need to be protected enough so that trees can be planted in those particular areas. So there's that particular investment or protection that needs to come into play. Like if there's a school, it has to be properly fenced so that to reduce destruction of those particular trees to grow. So the public land we need to restore those particular areas. If there are hilly areas that do not have tree cover, restoration needs to work on that particular place. So there are different modalities that can come into play. And the reason why I'm also thinking on sustainable use of forest. If I have a woodlot within the land where I've planted the trees that are consumed, are mainly consumed for livelihood support, I can able to harvest them from that particular space, but not go to the natural forest. The natural forest remains intact. But then we have other commercial growing aspects. So we are not necessarily saying do not touch the trees. What you're saying is the natural trees we have are very, very valuable. But then how do we now grow trees and project the consumption of timber use over a given period of time? And this is just my suggestion is protect the natural existing forest and then promote woodlot woodlots within different aspects, public land, personal land, across the board. That increases tree cover. And what is so special about our country is if our riparian lands can just be covered with proper trees, not the ones that actually take away water, but if all our riparian land were able to be secured to be just tree patches, that would be so amazing, because we'll have another increased level of tree cover. The other part is development is happening across Africa, especially for linear infrastructure. If you've been to Nairobi, there is Thika Road. When it floods, it's totally a mess because there is no outflow of water running away from the hard surface. But imagine if our road reserves were converted into forest reserves, where you run through Thika Road and it's just a beautiful forest along the side of the forest. So when it rains, the water goes and be preserved on those particular forest patches. But we are a developing country. We are Kenyans, as we see, when the land is close to the road, the value goes up. So we go build next to the road. We are forgetting that when it rains, it comes affects that. So there's these aspects of developing different aspects that we can actually deploy. And that is what the values of the film are for, is that we need to conserve, yes, the forest, but we also need to create more forests in the process.
Fantastic. As we wind up, you took time to produce this incredible film. Did plenty of research. You've told us that you spent time talking to Gisa. And he gave you so much, content that, you didn't have time to get mugshots of him, So from a personal point of view, from a personal level, what stood out for you in this film?
So what stood out for me in this film, especially when we were producing it, was just the passion of him sharing information. And the way he broke it down. He broke it down in the old ways of African storytelling. Sit down, listen, and learn from us. It was so beautiful at that particular point. It was so amazing. But then what struck me the most is when we were now screening the films in other areas, is that it got to a point where a whole room will just keep quiet to just listen to the whole film. And that for me was just like, wow, this is actually powerful. This is actually a powerful story. The way it was edited, the way it was produced, it's so impactful. And the reason I just hope I can able to get takeaways from people who have watched it and on what are they doing after watching the film. And that really helps. But for me, what stood out the most is when you show it to kids, there's a section where says he does the way the chimps sound, and then he does the chimp sounds, and in a silent room, everyone just comes out laughing, and it just brings back people to the reason why you're watching the film, is to be able to preserve and conserve the forest, and that is the beauty about that particular series of the forest. Yeah.
Fantastic. Lastly, what would you like people to ask themselves? Those self-reflection moments. So what would you like people to ask themselves after watching this incredible film, which, by the way, will be available for free on the festival platform until 12th of October?
What I'd like people to ask themselves is, one is, have they ever grown a tree, like just one single tree? How many people are we in Kenya? About 40 million plus. Imagine if every single person would have just grown a tree, not plant a tree, grown a tree. And you can grow it on through someone else, or through an institution, or through other venues. But imagine if 40 million of us made a decision today to just plant and grow one single tree. So you ask yourself, how many single trees have I planted and grown? Secondly is, what is my role in society? Most of us work mainly to feed the Kenyan dream or the global dream, have a car, get married. It's amazing. But then what is your role to society? What are you giving back to society? Coming from an African space, we are always told that a child is belongs to the community, not necessarily the two parents that take care of him or them. But that culture is getting lost. But then we need to ask ourselves is me as Anthony, what is my role? If my time on earth ends today, and people sit down and ask themselves, who was Anthony? And that is where the question now comes in. Did he contribute anything to society? Like, what did you contribute to society? And you may not be able to contribute to society directly that is significant, but the little that you do has a very huge impact just within that particular space. So 2 questions. What is your role in society, and how are you going to conserve the ecosystems? That is birds, insects, forests, marine life. So think about it. Whether you're an engineer, whether you're a business person, whether you are in career development, think about it deeply, because you use these resources every single day. You might just use the redefined resource, but these resources come from a natural component. And what have you invested back to that particular resource? And then lastly, have you ever grown a single tree for biodiversity? And those are the 2 questions I definitely want people to take away home with after watching the film. Yeah.
I think the parting shot from that film, as we wind up, Gisa gave a rallying call and said that everyone should plant a tree.
Yes, like everyone should at least plant a tree. Yeah.
Right. So I think we've come to the end of our Q&A session. Thank you so much, Anthony, for making time to talk to us, to give us insights, to drag us into this incredible story and the thought process and what actually went through the production of this story. We truly appreciate it. And thanks to everyone for joining us today. We hope to see you again in another Q&A session and films at the online New Vision for Earth Film Festival. So thank you so much, and let's meet another time.
Thank you.